Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempty. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today we have Donna Dupont joining us. Donna is the founder and chief strategist at Purple Compass in Montreal, Quebec. She's an award-winning designer and futurist with experience in the fields of healthcare, public safety, defense, and security. I'm really excited to talk to you today, Donna, so that you can tell me my future. I'm just teasing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy, for the invitation.
Yeah. How much do you get that, by the way?
A lot. A lot. Yeah. So definitely people think when they hear the title futurist, which I don't use all the time. Sometimes I use Foresight and design strategist or chief strategist to emphasize the strategic element and not the crystal ball element, because we're not predicting the future. And I'm sure we're going to get into that conversation on the podcast about the differences between that.
Yeah, I'm a finance professor by training, and people that don't really understand what that means, they're always asking me for my latest stock picks, and I'm like, I don't know. Buy and hold the S&P 500. There's your tip. All right, Donna. Before we get started, I ask all my guests this question. Please tell our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Oh, well, it's an interesting journey. It spans about 25 plus years, but the short version is that I started in healthcare. I loved what I did in my early days, my career. I worked in hospital, trauma, critical care. I was a registered respiratory therapist. I did a lot of work in outpatient education to try to help clients understand disease, chronic disease, and empower them to make choices for their health. And during that career, I went through a big crisis in the hospital sector. It was the SARS crisis. And that was a big turning point for me professionally, because I was studying public policy and health administration. And I saw what was happening in the system in terms of frontline providers and dealing with a crisis like SARS and trying to understand what was happening and how to keep people, the public safe, but also healthcare workers safe and to contain disease. So that was a big turning point for me. And that led, once I finished my studies in health administration, I started working for the government in Ontario in public policy, strategic planning, and I worked on a number of initiatives, all dealing with how to improve access to care, transform the system, adapt to the changing, landscape and needs. And that was pivotal for me in my growth. And then when I had an opportunity to go to the emergency management branch within the Ministry of Health, I took it and I learned a whole new sector of health-related emergencies, disasters, and what it looks like at the provincial level, at the big picture of the system. And that was the trigger point for me to start asking all these questions about how do you navigate this kind of complexity and uncertainty, especially in emergencies, in complex systems? And those conversations, those questions led to me discovering about futures, foresight, and design. And so I jumped in, I studied, and then it's been practicing and growing ever since.
That's fantastic. So in that description, you had a couple of pivot points in your career, but this next question, one event, one moment in your life that really put rocket boosters behind your career, what would that be?
Wow. Well, it was the one pivot point because I had to make a decision. And the big decision that was the hardest for me to make was to leave government, to resign, to pursue futures and foresight, and to grow my professional practice of it. And so that decision was a hard one. But once I made the decision, this is very much what I want to do and I want to learn and grow, then what accelerated me was I was open and available to new opportunities. And when the Canadian Forces College was looking for new designers and those studying strategic foresight and futures to support a lot of work with the Canadian Armed Forces and to help train senior military officers on these skill sets. I was available to jump on those opportunities and grow. And that was a big accelerator for me because I was working with really strong, complex situations, very constrained time limits in terms of how long we had to wrestle with these challenges and to be able to work with officers to help them expand the way they thought about the problem and new opportunities that potentially could be available. And so that was the start for me of really going deep and applying what I learned and taking it to the next level.
Yeah. So you make this decision to make this change, and then you start raising your hand. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And I had to start from the beginning because I was new to futures, even though I came with a strong background in public policy and strategy and had won awards in that area, in those areas. Futures was new for me because that was an added layer. And so, yes, it was a tremendous opportunity for me to grow.
That's awesome. So the basics here, this whole concept of being a futurist, can you demystify this for us? I'm sure there's a large swath of listeners that would look at that title and fill in all sorts of blanks. What's the most common misperception of the role that you encounter?
Well, so let me explain a bit about what futures is and what a futurist does. So a lot of times people think that someone who, calls himself a futurist, and that's just one variation of the title. It's not a protected title like some professionals, like, accounting designations, or even when I came from healthcare. It's a little bit more open, but essentially somebody who practices professionally in futures is not predicting the future. Right. So they're not doing predictions, but they're understanding patterns of change. So they're learning from the past, right? Yep. What we've learned, what we need to adjust and change. They're observing the present and what's changing. And those could be signals of change, whether they're weak signals of early change in the system or emerging issues or new patterns, potential for disruption. And then also opportunities to evolve, adapt and transform the system. So that's the space that futurists tend to work in. And it's a lot about using the future. It's a discipline of anticipation and using a structured way to investigate, to learn about future or plausible potential futures and gain new insights from those experiences to make better decisions today.
Yeah.
So that's what the practice is about.
Yeah, so you're not sitting in a dark room with an elaborate chessboard predicting the future, because I think those are some of the blanks that some folks might fill in.
Yeah.
What's the primary purpose of your firm, Purple Compass? Who's the average client, and what does the typical engagement look like?
So Purple Compass is all about helping organizations integrate futures and foresight within the work that they do. So I look at Purple Compass as a North Star for change and transformation. So supporting organizations to lead change within their organization. And so a lot of my clients to date have been government organizations, so from international development, health organizations, but also within defense and security. And that could be climate change and security, health security. I've even had an opportunity to be part of a space, international global space project, which was wonderful. And so all of those organizations, the common denominator is that they're really trying to understand the changing landscape and what it means for the future for their organization and what decisions they need to make to be prepared and future ready.
Yeah, I'm hearing decision making, change management, And then also later in the conversation, I want to get into probabilistic analysis, very simple, scenario type of analysis that a lot of business leaders really miss out on that kind of work. But let's keep ourselves grounded before the break at the basic level. I'm all about skills and skill development. My first book, I introduced 4 key skills for future career success: how we interact with each other, our human skills, financial acumen, business acumen, and data literacy. You bring a new skill to the table, something called futures literacy. Can you explain what futures literacy is all about?
So futures literacy is really about the discipline of anticipation. So it's being very intentional about how we use the future. So why we're making decisions and how we do that, and what type of new insights we can have to make decisions for today. So there's a lot of different assumptions about the future, and there's different ways that we make sense about the future and change. So it's bringing awareness to that, whether it's more of a forecasting model where that's a deterministic type of assumption around the future, meaning the past, may equal the future in terms of projections or change. But there are other different ways of understanding change. And so where futures literacy, or at least the foresight element of futures literacy starts, is with understanding system emergence, change, and going into the uncertainty. So not avoiding uncertainty, but going into the uncertainty. So it can be a nice bridge between a forecasting, a risk model, and then where are the areas that we don't know, we're uncertain. And those are areas where we can start to explore what's changing and start to build that plausible to possible lens on top of the probable one.
Yeah. You and I are actually closer together than some might imagine. So I'm a finance guy, as all of my listeners are aware. I'm on the board of the Financial Modeling Institute. And, building a financial model is all about building a set of plausible scenarios for future performance for a project, a business, secure, some type of security. All sorts of things can be modeled financially. So this concept of futures literacy, I'd just like to make sure that my listeners in the finance realm are really, really focused on this skill that you're proposing, because they are very much interrelated.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely related. And futures literacy there's different mindsets when you think about the future across different time horizons. So a lot of times when we're looking at risk assessments or financial projections, financial modeling, we're thinking very much with a management mindset of today, which is still very important because we need to keep businesses running. We need to be aware of the short-term decisions, and we need to make sure that those are solid, especially as we're going through challenging times. But we can't, we have to leave space for that changing landscape, that second horizon that we call, where things are emerging, where there's potential for disruption, but it's also the innovator's mindset. And that's where innovators thrive, because they're looking for what's changing, what's falling away, and where there's new opportunities. So that can be a great opportunity for competitive advantage. And it's taking you out of the jungle to the mountain. So a much bigger perspective of the system and the lens that you're looking at your particular work, business, or just environment, and making decisions from a strategic lens moving into the future.
Yeah. So for financial modelers listening to this, just pay attention to this difference of, okay, you're modeling based on the current structure of the business and the scenarios that can spawn off of that. But also what Donna, I believe, is saying is that we need to be thinking about other future potential disruptions that are outside of that current model, and that will then help us build more rich potential sets of future experiences to weigh and analyze. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. It's an opportunity. So Foresight, the plausible scenarios, is all about exploration. So it gives you a bit of freedom to say, these are what's changing. Let's build a scenario around this and let's test what we would do. So a what if, right? What would we do? How would we have to move differently if this scenario came true? What new skill sets, new capabilities would we need to, start to bring on? Maybe there's an adaptive process that we need to include, or maybe some of the things that we're doing won't be a good fit anymore. So by having an opportunity to stress test against plausible scenarios, it allows you to test the robustness and the resiliency of your current strategy against potential future operating environments, and it'll unlock some new ideas for innovation and transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Donna, we're going to take a really short break and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Andy here. I've got a new podcast I'd like to introduce you to, The Saturday Morning Muse. Start your weekend with me by exploring topics that span leadership, business management, education, and other musings that are designed to support your journey of personal and professional continuous improvement. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. And we're back with Donna Dupont talking about the future change management and organizational decision-making. For both businesses and individuals, decision-making is a key to future success. We are the outcome both of our environment, but also the stack of decisions that we've made leading up to today. Tomorrow is highly influenced by this stack of decisions. Some might say you can predict the future based on the track record of the decisions that you've made. Let's focus on business right now. What's the payoff to leaders from periodically rising above day-to-day chaos and firefighting to think about the future? What's your advice for this chaos-driven leader?
Yeah, that can be tricky because the chaos and the pressures of today can really dominate our mindset and thinking. And a lot of times it's a cognitive bias in terms of very much human behavior. We favor or reward short-term, short-term benefits over long-term gain. It's a common cognitive bias that we have to overcome when we do futures. So the value really is for leaders, if they are driven by the firefighting, that whole chaos mode, is really understanding that when you are in that firefighting mode, you're in a management mindset and you're kind of in the jungle of chaos, right? And it can be exhausting, and you don't know what's coming ahead because you're too busy reacting to the situation. And sometimes you do need people who are firefighting. It's not that you don't need that. You do need that because sometimes there's risks that you need to confront or address, or you need to mitigate. And action needs to be taken. But you also need to create space in an organization where you have a team tasked with looking at the bigger picture, whether that's at a strategic level or a visionary level or potential disruption on the horizon. You need both. And so I love this series that was created by the Harvard Business Review. It was talking about this type of mindset around leadership. And it was an ambidextrous type of mindset where you're doing both, right? And the organization embraces both. And there is teams that are tasked with both, but they report up so that you can get those multiple lenses. And you don't have teams that are going to be struggling with, the issues of today at the expense of the future for tomorrow.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is this word space. So many leaders, I'll call them managers, not leaders, don't create space within their teams. There's no slack to move beyond the firefighting and the chaos of the day to day and the things that have to get done right now. And they haven't consciously made a decision to create space for innovation, for forecasting, for the work of just, okay, let's get ourselves out of this day-to-day rat race and let's think about where our business can go. And it's such a you're going to create a much more rich environment by doing that.
Absolutely. So it's finding balance between the both lenses, because you need the management for day to day and you need to keep things moving from a business perspective, but you can't sacrifice the future in terms of new opportunities for business as well, right? Because things are changing, especially in technology, and there might be new ways of doing things. And if you are not thinking that way, in terms of your services, your offerings, and how that might be disrupted or shift going into the future, then you might be disrupted by someone else who's thinking that way. So it's better to have that internal self-disruption as an organization than be disrupted and be blindsided because you're not paying attention because you're in the jungle of firefighting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So now let's turn to the individual here. I love to coach and mentor others, and I've had a number of folks that I've coached throughout my career that just have this woe is me mindset. I'm unlucky. My dreams are just always going to be dashed anyway, so why try? What do you say to, I'm sure you've encountered individuals like that as well. What do you say to an individual who's adopted that kind of doom scroll mindset, and how do they break out?
Yes. Well, I have seen it. And I think it's normal to have that mindset. There's an interesting exercise that I do. It's like an icebreaker exercise that I do with my clients. And it's all about understanding your future orientation, right? So do you have more of a positive or negative orientation towards the future? And do you feel you have agency for change? And a lot of times people are not aware of their mindset towards the future. They're maybe just reacting. Maybe they've had experiences based on the past. So their thoughts, their emotions, their feelings tie them to the past, and it shapes their behavior today. So the one thing you need to do to break out of that is, the first thing is awareness. Awareness of your own internal mindset, your mental model. Right? So all systems start with a mindset. And even our own personal system starts with a mindset. So the best way to really start to understand, unpack your mindset is to start journaling, because it's a conversation with yourself, and you can start to explore, what's your story? Okay, what's your story? What are your challenges? What are your assumptions about the future? Are those true? What have you learned from those experiences in the past? Because oftentimes challenges can also be viewed as an opportunity for something new, for change. And so you can challenge yourself in a safe way through journaling to uncover, some of those maybe biases you have, maybe past emotional experiences that have tied you or that have made you afraid to take steps towards change. And then identifying, okay, what is a safe first step that you can take to start to move to where you would like to go? And with courage, right? Because it takes a lot of courage to go into the unknown. It takes, being brave to go there and to try something different, knowing that it might not work out perfectly, but you're going to learn, you're going to apply that knowledge, and you're going to grow, and you're going to pivot, and you're going to start to get some momentum. So that's the journey.
Yeah.
And I've done that with my personal life as well, but I also help clients work through that in organizations.
Yeah, the power of writing it's such an awesome power because it unlocks so many things. It has for me. And then learning about cognitive bias. I'm also hearing that in your answer, journaling, of course, but learning about yourself and what some of those blockers, those internal blockers might be that you've built for yourself over time. They've calcified and accumulated. And there's these walls that exist in our mind that don't allow us to move forward or past or through. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's a mindset, but it's also a deep narrative and our story that we keep telling ourselves. And sometimes we have to rewrite our story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to reframe and rewrite it. So this concept of journaling allows you to start to safely, explore who you are and your story and make it visible, and then start to reshape that story.
Yeah. Awesome. Donna, a few kind of rapid fire questions. The first, what's the most important balancing act that you play when you're talking to a leadership team about focusing energy on the future, strategy, forecasting versus the day-to-day?
So for organizations that are really interested in leading and really want to understand that navigation between forecasting and strategy, I start with always where they are, right? What perspective they're holding today, and to learn from that perspective, right? So as much as you can, what do you know from your forecasting methods? What are those boundaries and the limitations of the methods you're using? Where is the uncertainty? Okay, so documenting it, acknowledging it, but also starting to pay attention to what's changing in the space that you are working in, that lens, and the assumptions attached to that. So are those assumptions, do they still hold true? Are they accurate? So really getting a good read on the lens and understanding what's happening in that space.
Sure.
And then intentionally expanding your lens, right? And starting to think much broader.
Yeah.
And looking at the bigger picture and getting into more, what are those dynamics happening, not just within your organization, but broader within the system that can put pressure on your organization or your industry. So trends that are really amplifying or growing, but also new weak signals, emerging issues, disruptions, but starting to think about those what if questions and starting to see it at a bigger picture. So that's where I would start with organizations and starting to help them understand how they can bridge those two different types of mindsets and different types of knowledge that we're generating from each one.
Yeah, so fast forwarding too fast will throw people off, and you're not going to get the best results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Donna, we're going to 3 lightning round questions. Question number 1, I give you access to a time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Donna Dupont. Yeah. What's the message? What previous version of yourself do you send it to?
Well, the message would be trust yourself. Trust yourself. You're going to go on adventures. You are going to learn. You might have some failures, but you're going to come back stronger, and you're going to evolve, and you're going to grow. So trust yourself, and everything will be okay. You don't have to worry so much. And I would go back to myself when I was between 18 and 20 years old, when I was starting my educational journey. And I was still trying to understand myself and what I wanted to do with my life. I'd go back then and really allow myself to be a little bit more braver and bolder. Eventually I got there, but it took a lot of growth and a lot of learning over many years.
Yeah. All right. Last one. We're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth as a leader?
So right now, I'm focused a lot on consolidating the work I've done for the last 6 years, working with a lot of leaders, championing change, working through uncertainty and shaping different future strategies. And I'm consolidating that and wanting to offer that to a much larger audience and helping organizations build those internal capabilities. So not so much doing it for an organization, but helping be that guide, and so that they can build their own internal knowledge capabilities so that they can feel confident to champion change and build those future literacies within their organization.
Excellent. Donna, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Where can people get a hold of you?
So I can be reached at purplecompass.ca. There's an opportunity to subscribe for updates. I have a lot of really exciting new opportunities being launched in 2025 for people to get involved and to learn more about futures and strategic foresight.
Excellent. Well, you've been a fantastic guest today. I've learned a lot. I'm sure that our guests have, our listeners have as well. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Andy, for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Excellent. Well, my name is Andy Tempty. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your colleagues. The show was produced by Nicholas Tempty, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.